Hey guys, tonight we drift far back, farther than crumbling castles or forgotten scrolls. Tonight we slip into the cool hush of a Stone Age morning where the air smells faintly of earth, fire, and yesterday's forgotten embers. You stir awake beneath a carefully stacked pile of soft pelts, the world still dark except for the faint glow of a rising sun sneaking through the jagged entrance of your home, which incidentally is a rather drafty but impressively decorated cave. Before your feet even touch the cool stone floor, you remember it's a special day. Tonight, the cave will host the grandest celebration of the turning season, and you, my friend, have much to do before then. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, if you're up late like our Stone Age ancestors preparing for their festivities, drop a comment with your location and local time. It's oddly comforting knowing we're all a little bit prehistoric at heart. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first sound of the day is the gentle clatter of stones as you step toward the entrance. The morning mist lingers in the valley below, wrapping everything in a soft, sleepy fog. Outside, a small group is already gathering. Their silhouettes blur into the mist as they prepare to hunt for something more important than meat today: color. Your first task is critical: collecting ochre. Not just any ochre, mind you. This must be the richest, most vibrant hue to adorn the celebration wall. Historians still argue whether these pigments were purely decorative or held deeper spiritual significance. But standing here, with the cool breeze brushing against your bare arms and the scent of damp moss rising from the ground, you're fairly certain it's both. You tie a woven satchel around your waist, a little frayed at the edges, but it's held together through many a celebration. Off you go, your footsteps light against the dewy grass, eyes scanning the familiar path for that glint of earthy red or sun-baked yellow hidden among the rocks. And as you crouch by a shallow stream, fingers brushing through soft sediment, you spot it, a streak of brilliant ochre, the color so vibrant it almost hums against the muted tones of the landscape. You chip away at it gently, careful not to take too much. After all, the spirits of the earth don't take kindly to greed. Or so the elders say. On your way back, you can't help but smile at the thought of tonight's gathering. There will be roasted roots brushed with honey. Yes, it's a thing, even if historians aren't sure exactly when honey entered the prehistoric menu. And those tiny stone charms you strung together last season, you're pretty sure they'll make an appearance above the storytelling nook. Back at the cave, you step through the threshold and pause. You run your hands along the cool, familiar stone walls, already adorned with faded outlines of mammoths and graceful deer, their forms captured in simple but powerful strokes. Today, new symbols will join them: spirals, handprints, and the occasional mysterious figure no one really understands, but everyone agrees looks impressive. Your heart feels lighter now. There's work ahead, yes, but it's the sort of work that doesn't feel heavy, the kind that makes your fingers itch with purpose and your mind wander with the joy of creation. And so, the preparations begin. The ochre lies beside you in small, crumbling piles of red, yellow, and even a surprising streak of deep purple. You sit on a flat stone ledge near the cave entrance, grinding the pigments carefully against a rounded river stone, the powder gathering like fragile clouds, waiting to become something more. A light breeze stirs the cave's interior, carrying with it the distant sound of laughing children and the rhythmic thump of footsteps. Others are gathering materials too. Across the valley, beyond the fog-softened treetops, you imagine groups searching along riverbanks and shallow cliffs, each hunter-gatherer tuned into the subtle language of the land. Today's task is more than mixing colors. It's about crafting the mood of the night. You pull a scrap of sun-dried animal hide from your pouch, carefully sprinkling the ochre powder onto its surface, testing the tones. The reds glow warm and bold, the yellows like little suns trapped in dust. You dip your fingers into a bowl of water, swirling it into the powder until it forms a smooth, creamy paste. Historians still argue whether these pigments were used merely for decoration or as part of sacred rituals. Some say the colors represented life and rebirth. Others claim they were nothing more than an early attempt at interior design. But as the sun climbs higher and catches the shimmering particles clinging to your fingertips, you're convinced these colors mean something beyond words. Satisfied with the mixture, you stand, stretching your back as a familiar figure approaches. It's Mara, known across the valley for her skill at crafting the most delicate garlands from feathers and bones. With a playful grin, she tosses you a string of tiny shells, their soft clatter like wind chimes in the quiet morning. "Don't forget the garlands," she teases. "A celebration without them is just another night around the fire." You laugh, knowing she's right. You'll need to gather feathers, bright ones, if possible, and slender bones, light enough to dangle from the woven strands without pulling them down. The best decorations, after all, are the ones that move gently with the air, catching firelight and casting dancing shadows against the cave walls. And so, with a new task at hand, you head toward the old cedar grove where the ground is always littered with treasures, fallen feathers from nesting birds, and the delicate remains of small creatures long since returned to the earth. The air grows warmer as the sun pushes the last of the morning mist away. You move carefully under the wide branches, your eyes trained on the ground for flashes of color. Deep blues from jays, warm browns from sparrows, the rare but prized red from the mountain finch. You collect them gently, tucking each feather safely into your satchel. Beside a moss-covered stone, you find a perfectly smooth, hollow bone, a flute of sorts, if you were the musical type. But tonight, it will become part of the grand garlands hanging across the cave ceiling, swaying softly above heads as the celebration unfolds. By the time you return, your pouch is filled with the makings of beauty. The ochre is ready, the feathers gathered, and the bones polished to a soft, pale gleam. You sit again at the mouth of the cave, threading the materials together with thin, flexible reeds. Each knot ties you closer to the coming night, each bead a tiny promise of the stories, songs, and sleepy laughter that will echo through these stone walls long after the fire burns out. Outside, the sun drifts westward. Soon, it will be time to prepare the smoke ritual. But for now, you let the garlands rest across your lap and simply enjoy the gentle hush before the true work begins. The shadows begin to stretch long and thin across the cave walls as the sun dips toward the horizon. This is the perfect moment for the next tradition, the scented smoke ritual. You gather a bundle of dried herbs tied neatly with strands of twisted grass. The familiar blend includes wild sage, crisp mountain mint, and a touch of resin from the old pine trees that cling stubbornly to the rocky slopes above the valley. This isn't just about masking the musty scent of a busy cave. Oh no. Tonight's smoke must carry with it the very essence of calm and celebration. Historians still argue whether such rituals were meant to ward off evil spirits or simply clear the air of whatever questionable culinary experiments happened the night before. But you, standing here with the herbs in your hand and the faint scent already beginning to rise, know it's something far more personal. It's a reminder to the gathered souls that tonight is set apart from every other night. You kneel beside the smouldering embers of the communal fire pit, the stones still warm from the midday sun. With practiced care, you feed the dried herbs into the glowing coals. A thin tendril of smoke spirals upward, curling like a lazy serpent toward the cave's dark ceiling. The fragrance is immediate and soothing. The sharpness of the mint clears the mind, while the sage settles low in your chest like a sigh. Children pause in their games near the entrance, noses lifted curiously to the air. Even the elder, reclining near the far wall, who's famously immune to most sensory pleasures, gives a slow, appreciative nod. You circle the space slowly, wafting the scented smoke with a large flat fan made from woven reeds. The air grows heavier with each pass, and soon the cave feels wrapped in a warm, invisible blanket of calm. And then it's time to paint. The ochre waits patiently by the celebration wall, still vibrant despite the lengthening shadows. You kneel before the canvas of stone, fingers trembling slightly with the excitement of creation. You begin with the familiar. Broad handprints, pressed firmly against the rock, the red pigment blooming against the pale surface. Your palm tingles as you lift it away, the shape forever etched into this moment. From there, you swirl the pigments into wide arcs and delicate spirals. The elders claim these spirals represent the journey of life, endless and connected. But there's a newer theory whispered among the younger crowd, that they're simply a way to pass time when conversation runs dry. As you work, the cave walls begin to come alive. Figures of graceful deer leap between palm prints, spirals swirl into the tails of imagined beasts, and tiny dots cluster like the stars soon to appear in the evening sky outside. A small group gathers behind you, their footsteps soft against the earth-packed floor. Children point excitedly at the newest shapes. One asks if the great swirl you've drawn is meant to be a map, a story, or a warning. You smile but say nothing. Some mysteries, after all, are best left to linger in the flickering shadows of firelight. By the time the last stroke of ochre is placed, the smoke has thinned, and the air feels lighter, cleaner. You lean back against the cool stone wall, hands stained in colors as old as time itself, and admire the evolving story stretching across the ancient canvas. Somewhere behind you, preparations have already begun for the communal fire pit. The low thud of stones being arranged carries through the chamber, a comforting sound of tradition in motion. But for now, you stay where you are, letting the calm of the ritual settle in your chest. Tonight's celebration is nearly ready, and as you breathe in the faint trace of mint and sage still lingering in the air, you know the cave is ready too. The celebration wall now glows gently with fresh color, its shapes and spirals flickering to life each time the fire pit sparks. You take a slow breath, satisfied, but your work is far from over. Tonight isn't only about what meets the eyes, it's about the warmth of the hearth, the perfect circle of fire that draws everyone together. So, you turn your attention to the heart of the gathering space, the communal fire pit. In the center of the cave's wide chamber, a shallow hollow waits patiently, ringed with smooth river stones. These aren't just any stones. They've been carefully selected over seasons, rounded by water, free of cracks, and large enough to hold heat well into the night. You remember how, as a child, you joined the elders in searching for stones just like these, your hands numb from dipping into cold streams, eyes searching for that perfect dull shine under the water. You crouch by the pit, arranging the stones once more, just in case one shifted during the day's preparations. Each must be perfectly placed, both for function and for the silent beauty of symmetry. Historians still argue whether prehistoric fire circles had hidden symbolic meanings or were simply practical arrangements. But as your hands guide the last stone into place, you suspect the answer is both. Satisfied with the formation, you move to gather kindling, thin twigs, dried moss, a few strips of bark curled and ready to catch flame. But tonight, there's a special addition. Someone, likely Mara again, has left a small bundle of dried wildflowers and fragrant herbs beside the pit. You smile at the thoughtful touch. When the fire takes, it won't just warm the space. It'll perfume the air with delicate hints of lavender and sweet grass. With practiced ease, you build the fire's skeleton, laying the kindling carefully beneath the larger logs stacked in a pyramid that promises a slow, steady burn. You crouch low, your breath a soft gust over the smoldering ember left from the day's earlier cooking fire. It catches on the first try, an encouraging sign. Thin tendrils of smoke curl upward, blending almost playfully with the last wisps of your earlier smoke ritual. As the fire grows, a gentle warmth begins to push back the evening chill. Light dances across the painted walls, bringing the ancient figures to life. The leaping deer seem to move, their hooves pounding some invisible trail just above the heads of the gathering crowd. From behind, you hear the rustle of feet as others return from their final errands. Someone carries a bundle of fresh green leaves. Tonight's feast will be wrapped and roasted among the coals, just as it has been done for generations. You pause for a moment, letting yourself feel the rise of heat against your cheeks, the low crackle of the flames, mingling with the soft hum of voices. And then you move toward a smaller corner of the cave, a space that holds its own kind of magic. This is where the storytelling happens. Carefully, you arrange the leaf curtains Mara and her helpers wove earlier, creating a cozy nook tucked just far enough from the fire to allow for softer voices and slower stories. The leaf partitions sway slightly with the movement of air, their shadows rippling gently along the stone floor. This corner isn't just for stories, it's for secrets, for memories passed quietly from the old to the young, for the kind of wisdom that doesn't need grand speeches or loud proclamations. You smooth a soft hide onto the stone floor, its familiar scent mingling now with the fire's sweet smoke. A few smooth stones are placed in a semicircle, seats for the littlest ones, who will crowd close, eyes wide in wonder as the elders spin tales older than the carvings on the walls. And as you step back, admiring this small, perfect space, a soft smile tugs at the corners of your mouth. The night is nearly upon you. Outside, the first stars begin to appear, faint pinpricks of light against the indigo sky. Inside, the fire crackles a little louder, the warmth spreading through every corner of the cave. Soon, laughter will rise and shadows will dance. But for now, in this brief, perfect quiet, you savor the simple joy of knowing everything is ready. The air has settled into that perfect state of anticipation, thick with warmth from the growing fire, sweet with the scent of smoldering herbs, and just cool enough near the cave walls to make the flames feel like a gentle embrace. You stretch your legs, feeling the soft rustle of festival furs brush against your ankles. Ah, yes, the matter of dressing properly for the celebration. It wouldn't do to show up before the elders and guests still wearing the same weather-stained hunting wrap you've worn all week. Tonight calls for something special. You make your way toward the storage alcove, tucked behind a natural curve in the cave wall. This small hollow is where the community keeps its best textiles and ceremonial trappings, furs brushed until they shine like silver under firelight, necklaces strung from polished bones, and if you're lucky, that one cloak still faintly scented with crushed lavender from last season's gathering. Your fingers trail lightly over each folded pelt. There's the heavy bear hide, far too warm for tonight's crowded cave, and a light deerskin wrap, supple and soft with years of careful tending. You choose the latter, draping it over your shoulders with practiced ease. It smells faintly of sun-dried grass and something faintly sweet, perhaps the memory of last year's celebration still clinging to the fibers. Near the edge of the pile lies a small, intricately knotted necklace made of thin leather strips and smooth, pale bones, each bone polished to a soft gleam, cool under your fingers. You slip it over your head, the necklace settling against your collarbones with a satisfying weight. Historians still argue whether these adornments were purely decorative or if they carried the weight of status and symbolism. Some say the placement of each bead and bone told a story of successful hunts, important friendships, or whispered alliances made in the flickering firelight of long-forgotten nights. You like to think it's a little of both. After all, what's the point of wearing something beautiful if it doesn't also remind you of where you've been? Across the chamber, you spot Mara again. She's adjusting the garlands you strung earlier, ensuring they hang at just the right angle to sway gently with the night's cool drafts. She catches your eye and gives you a small, approving nod. Her own festival attire is impeccable. A flowing wrap, adorned with brightly colored feathers and tiny stone charms that tinkle softly when she moves. A group of children dashes past, their laughter bubbling up like a sudden spring. They're wearing simple wreaths of braided grass and wild flowers, their cheeks smudged with dots of ochre in playful imitation of the elders' ceremonial markings. One small boy, his wild hair sticking up in all directions, pauses and looks at you with wide, curious eyes. "Are the songs starting yet?" he asks, breathless from running. "Soon," you promise with a knowing smile. "Very soon." He grins and races off again, joining the others as they practice their shadow dances near the fire. You watch them for a moment, their small forms casting exaggerated playful shapes against the painted walls. Tiny hands become great horned beasts. Small feet stomp out rhythms older than memory. You can't help but smile at the thought. Here they are, rehearsing the very dances that one day they'll teach to their own children. Movements passed down, not through books or carvings alone, but through the living, breathing motion of bodies swaying in the firelight. And just as the fire crackles louder, sending a fresh wave of warmth through the cavern, a soft horn sounds from the entrance, a low, haunting note that echoes against the stone walls and signals what everyone has been waiting for. Guests are arriving. The night's true magic is about to begin. The horn's long, low call lingers like a living thing in the cool evening air, curling through the stone corridors of your home and out into the twilight beyond. You straighten your festival wrap and take a slow breath. This is the moment when everything changes. From quiet preparations to the hushed excitement of new arrivals, familiar faces, and perhaps a few unknown ones too. You move toward the cave entrance, the floor cool beneath your feet despite the fire's warmth. Outside, the sky has deepened into a rich indigo, stars beginning to blink awake. The last threads of twilight cling stubbornly to the horizon, painting the world in soft gradients of blue and silver. From across the open plain, small groups of travelers appear, shadowed figures moving steadily toward the welcoming glow of your cave. They come bearing simple gifts, bundles of rare herbs wrapped in woven leaves, curious little trinkets carved from driftwood or bone, and most importantly, their stories. A hush settles over the cave as the first guests step inside. Their faces are worn from travel, their eyes bright with relief and anticipation. You greet them with a slow nod, the unspoken language of shared understanding. There is no need for grand welcomes, just the warmth of the fire and the scent of smoke and sweet grass to say, "You are safe here." Mara steps forward, offering each guest a small handful of roasted nuts, still warm from the coals, and a few dried berries. It's a simple gesture, but one steeped in meaning. Hospitality here isn't measured by extravagance, but by the comfort of small kindnesses. The visitors settle in slowly, taking their places around the fire or along the edges of the cave walls. The children, of course, can't resist circling the newcomers, eyes wide as they study unfamiliar necklaces, exotic feather adornments, and curious face markings. You notice one elder among the guests, his hair long and silver, tied neatly behind his head. Around his neck hangs a single pendant, a carved figure so worn that even the shape is a mystery. Some say it's a guardian spirit. Others claim it's simply a good luck charm passed down through generations. Historians still argue about these symbols, whether they were spiritual talismans or simply the prehistoric equivalent of a fashionable brooch. The elder settles himself near the fire, his eyes half closed, as if already slipping into the calm rhythm of the gathering. But you've seen this before. That moment of quiet isn't sleep, it's memory. He's preparing his story, the one he's undoubtedly been saving for a night just like this. As more guests trickle in, the cave swells with soft voices, the occasional burst of laughter, and the quiet clink of charms and beads shifting as people settle into their places. Someone passes around a small bowl of honeyed nuts, their glossy surface catching the firelight. Outside, the cool night air drifts gently into the cave, stirring the hanging garlands and making the feathered decorations sway. You glance toward the celebration wall, now alive with shadows and light. The painted deer seem to move, their shapes flickering in time with the soft shuffle of feet and the crackling of the fire. And then, with a final gust of cool air and the faintest sigh of the night, the last group of travelers arrives. They step through the stone archway, their faces unfamiliar but their expressions warm. New stories, new songs, perhaps even new dances to join the ones already rehearsed by the eager children. You take your place near the central fire pit, your hands resting on the smooth stone beside you, feeling its warmth seep slowly into your palms. Around you, a circle of faces glows softly in the firelight, eyes reflecting the dancing flames. The night is young. The celebration has only just begun, and in this perfect, quiet pause, you know, tonight's stories will linger long after the embers have cooled. The hush of the gathering holds, like the delicate pause before the first note of a song. Then, almost imperceptibly, the soft sound of stones shifting marks the beginning. An elder, his frame slight, but his voice rich and smooth, like water over polished rock, leans forward. Without preamble, he begins. His voice is low and measured, meant not to command attention, but to invite it, like a hand extended across a quiet space. He speaks of long-ago hunts and even longer winters, of how the first fires were coaxed from stubborn sparks and how the great bison herds once moved like rolling thunder across the plains. Children edge closer, their eyes wide, their restless feet finally still. Behind them, the adults listen, with the subtle focus of those who know these stories by heart and yet feel their power anew every time they're told. And then, with a small wave of his hand, the elder gestures to you. It's your turn to share what you've prepared. A space set aside for joy and mischief, for the light-hearted dances that turn even the coldest stone floors into warm places of shared delight. The children take their cue, bounding up from their seated circle. With great ceremony, despite the obvious excitement barely contained in their small frames, they form a line before the decorated wall. Shadow dances, one of the oldest traditions and surely the most endearing. Historians still argue whether these simple plays were rituals of gratitude, calls for fertility, or just a way to burn off the endless energy of youth before bed. But standing here, watching their silhouettes stretch tall and wild across the flickering cave walls, it hardly matters. The children begin with the classics. One shapes their hands into the familiar arc of a great horned deer, while another crouches low, imitating the silent stalk of a hunting cat. Their small shadows stretch impossibly tall, the flicker of the fire turning every movement into something larger than life. A boy in the back stumbles dramatically, falling into a heap with such theatrical flair that even the sternest elders cannot help but chuckle softly. Laughter bubbles up through the cave, blending with the low crackle of the fire and the gentle rustle of garlands swaying overhead. For a few moments, the heavy worries of survival, of tomorrow's hunts, and the uncertainty of the seasons fall away. You sit back, letting the warmth of the fire ease the last of the day's tension from your shoulders. The garlands you strung earlier sway just above your head, their feathers catching faint glimmers of light as they move. One small girl takes center stage now, her hands graceful as she crafts the shadow of a great bird soaring above imaginary cliffs. She doesn't rush. No, she knows the power of a slow, deliberate gesture. The elders exchange glances. There's a future storyteller in that one. As the final dance ends and the children collapse into a laughing, satisfied heap near the fire, the elder leans forward once more, his eyes twinkling beneath bushy brows. Perhaps now, he says softly, it is time for the charms to be hung. A low murmur of agreement ripples through the gathered crowd. This is the final touch before the feast begins, a tradition that predates even the painted walls. One by one, carved wooden charms, polished stones, and carefully knotted bone figures are brought forward. They're tied to the garlands, hung above the central fire, placed gently near the entrance, each meant to invite good fortune, to honor those who've come before, and to keep mischievous spirits entertained rather than meddlesome. You stand once more, helping secure a particularly beautiful charm, carved into the shape of a spiral, smooth from years of careful handling. As your fingers tie the final knot, you can't help but wonder, what will the stories say about tonight, when the children grown old sit in this same cave and speak of the night the shadows danced just right and the fire burned longer than anyone expected. Outside, the stars blaze brilliantly now, and the night has truly arrived. The garlands sway, the charms tinkle softly, and the promise of the feast lingers in the warm, delicious air. The celebration is far from over. In fact, it feels as though it's only just begun. The faint clatter of charms fades into the background as a more immediate concern stirs the gathering. The unmistakable aroma of roasted roots and honeyed nuts. It begins as a subtle sweetness weaving through the smoky air, but soon it's impossible to ignore. Stomachs rumble in a low, shared harmony, unspoken but completely understood. The elders give one another those knowing glances that mean it's time, and a quiet flurry of movement ripples through the cave. You rise from your seat near the fire, brushing faint traces of ochre from your hands. It's your turn to help prepare the feast. Tonight's spread isn't extravagant by modern standards, no towering platters or elaborate courses, but it is crafted with a quiet sort of reverence. Flat stones, arranged along the fire, hold bundles of wild tubers wrapped in large green leaves. The leaves crackle gently, releasing steam, infused with the faint scent of mountain herbs tucked carefully inside. Nearby, a shallow pit, lined with hot coals, cradles thin strips of meat. Not the tough, stringy stuff from lean winter hunting, but the softer cuts saved for special occasions. A brush made of long twigs and bundled herbs lies ready, waiting to glaze the meat with a mixture of honey and crushed nuts. You take up the brush, dipping it carefully into a bowl of the golden mixture, and sweep it gently across the meat. The honey sizzles on contact, releasing a rich, warm sweetness that mingles with the herbal smoke already thick in the air. Historians still argue whether such recipes were the result of culinary experimentation or simple necessity. But here, under the soft glow of firelight, and with the chorus of faint stomach growls, you're quite certain it's a bit of both. As the food cooks, you help arrange woven mats along the stone floor near the fire. These aren't just for sitting, they're places of honor. Each mat represents a family, a visiting group, or a solitary traveler welcomed into the fold. The best spots are those nearest the fire, where the warmth is strongest and the flames cast their most dramatic shadows. Children dart between the mats, giggling as they reserve the best seats with small trinkets, smooth pebbles, lucky feathers, or bits of knotted string. You shake your head with a smile. Even in the most ancient times, it seems, seat-saving is a universal tradition. Finally, the food is ready. With practiced hands, you and a few others begin distributing the bundles. The hot leaves unfurl with a satisfying hiss of steam, revealing perfectly roasted roots, glistening with juices and dotted with bits of crushed nuts. The simple magic of it fills the space. No plates, no silverware, just hands reaching gratefully, breaking off pieces, sharing freely. The first bite is everything you've been waiting for. Sweet, earthy, warm. You chew slowly, savoring the rich flavors as the fire pops and crackles beside you. Conversations begin again, low and content. Stories drift between bites, laughter spills gently into the night, and the children, having finally burned through their endless energy, settle near their families, eyes already growing heavy with the glow of full bellies and flickering firelight. For a brief moment, you lean back against the cool stone wall and simply watch. Watch the way the firelight dances across painted walls, how the garlands sway gently overhead, and how the charms spin slowly, casting tiny, playful shadows across the gathering. This is what it's all about. Not grand gestures or monumental events, but small, perfect moments where the world feels full, safe, and beautifully simple. Outside, the stars hang low and heavy, as if they too are leaning in closer, unwilling to miss a single heartbeat of this quiet, timeless joy. The feast winds down in that lovely, unspoken way where no official end is needed. Just the slow fading of conversation and the collective sigh of satisfied bellies. The air is thick with the mingled scents of roasted roots, honey, and cooling embers. Somewhere off to your right, a few of the youngest children have already curled up beside their parents, heads resting on soft furs, their small faces lit faintly by the dying firelight. But before the night can slip too far into the hush of sleep, there is one final tradition yet to be honored. You glance toward the cave entrance, where a low, carved wooden charm swings gently on its reed cord. Beyond that threshold, a few of the bravest souls gather near the edge of the clearing, preparing for what everyone secretly looks forward to most: the sharing of curiosities brought by visiting traders. You rise slowly, stretching out your legs, the warmth of the fire still clinging to your skin. Outside, the air bites a little sharper now, the kind of crisp cool that makes your breath visible in soft puffs as you step beyond the glow of the cave. Near the edge of the gathering, a small circle has formed. In the center, laid out on a worn piece of tanned hide, are the treasures, little things that have traveled far across valleys and forests, rivers and rocky slopes, finally arriving here for tonight's quiet wonder. There's a smooth, perfectly round stone that feels unnaturally warm to the touch, its origin unknown, though plenty of theories are offered in hushed tones. Someone else lays out a small, delicate comb carved entirely from bone, its edges worn, but still showing the faintest trace of intricate patterns. And then there's the real prize, a cluster of tiny beads made from seashells. Their pale surfaces gleam faintly under the starlight, a soft luster unlike anything found in this rugged, landlocked valley. Historians still argue about these gatherings. Were they early forms of trade markets or simple exchanges of stories and symbols meant to strengthen distant bonds? Standing here now, as a small boy runs his fingers over the shell beads with wide-eyed awe, you can't help but think it doesn't really matter. What's important is this moment, the spark of curiosity, the quiet thrill of discovery. The wonder of knowing the world stretches far beyond these familiar hills. The traders speak softly, sharing the origins of their treasures with those who gather close enough to hear. Their voices blend with the night's gentle sounds, the far-off hoot of an owl, the rustle of wind through the leafless branches, and the occasional soft crack of a cooling firestone. You crouch near the circle, running your fingers lightly across the smooth surface of that curious warm stone. Some claim it came from the heart of the mountains, where the earth still breathes fire. Others say it was simply a river stone, left too long in the sun. With a faint smile, you leave it where it sits. Some mysteries are sweeter when left unsolved. Back inside the cave, the fire has mellowed into a gentle bed of glowing coals. The painted walls seem softer now, their vibrant colors muted under the dim light, the swirling spirals like ancient lullabies etched into stone. One by one, people settle into their chosen sleeping places, fur-lined nests tucked into corners, close to the walls where the warmth lingers longest. The elders sit quietly for a while longer, their silhouettes hunched and still against the glowing coals. You return to your own spot, near the storytelling nook, laying back onto a soft pile of hides. Your body relaxes, sinking into the warmth, while the faint tinkling of charms swaying in the entrance lulls you towards sleep. Outside, the night holds steady, blanketing the world in a peace so complete it feels almost sacred. And here, within the stone embrace of your ancient home, the celebrations settle into memory, soft, warm, and timeless. The night is deep now, a velvet silence blanketing every stone and shadow. The cave's grand fire has quieted to a glowing bed of embers, pulsing gently like the steady breath of the earth itself. Around you, the soft sounds of slumber rise and fall. Content sighs, the occasional rustle of furs, and that curious little snore from the elder who insists He never snores at all. But before dreams fully claim you, there is one more quiet ritual to unfold. The moment when those still awake slip quietly to the entrance and gaze out at the night sky, tracing stories among the stars. You rise carefully, stepping softly across the cool stone floor, careful not to disturb the bundles of sleeping children or the scattered remains of the night's feast. Outside, the air greets you with a crisp embrace, and for a moment, you pause there at the entrance, breathing in the pure stillness. Above, the stars blaze fiercely against the dark canvas of sky, brighter and closer than they ever seem during the day's busy hours. Your eyes naturally search out the familiar patterns. There's the great horned beast, a line of bright stars curving just so to form its antlers. And near it, the long trail of the sky serpent winding across the heavens. Historians still debate whether these early stargazers used the constellations as maps, calendars, or simply as a comforting reminder that even in the vast unknown, there were patterns to follow. You wonder quietly if it wasn't all of those things, plus the simple joy of imagining that the great animals they painted on their walls lived on above them, galloping endlessly through the night. You sit on the smooth stone ledge at the cave's entrance, pulling your wrap tighter against the cool breeze. For a while, you simply listen. Far below, the faint sound of the river carries up from the valley floor, a low, constant murmur. In the distance, a lone wolf calls out, not a threatening sound, but something mournful and oddly soothing. The kind of sound that makes you feel small and safe all at once, cradled under the endless sky. Behind you, the cave is quiet. The fire's glow still casts a soft golden arc across the ceiling, illuminating the painted stories that now feel like old friends keeping watch through the night. You rest your chin on your knees, watching as a faint trail of light arcs across the sky, a falling star, burning briefly before vanishing into the unknown. A thought crosses your mind, soft as the breeze. How many nights like this have come before? How many times have others sat right here, wrapped in warm furs, feet bare against cool stone, dreaming their quiet dreams under the same glowing constellations? And how many more will come after, long after your footprints have faded and your stories have been folded into new ones? There's a quiet comfort in that thought, a reminder that everything passes in its time, and yet some things, like the warmth of a fading fire, the hush of a star-filled sky, and the soft murmur of a sleeping home, remain eternal. With that, you rise slowly, one last deep breath of the cool night air filling your lungs. You step back inside, where the warmth greets you like an old friend, and settle once more into your place by the fading fire. Eyes heavy, body warm, and heart content, you finally surrender to sleep. The last sounds, you hear the soft rustle of feathers overhead and the faint crackle of the dying embers. Sleep comes easily now, but not for everyone. Just beyond the faint circle of fading embers, the older children stir quietly, their curiosity stronger than their drowsiness. You remember those nights well, the irresistible pull of staying awake just a little longer, to listen, to learn, to feel like part of the secret conversations that only happen when the littlest ones are asleep and the adults think no one is listening. They sit in a loose cluster near the fire's edge, their faces half-shadowed, their eyes reflecting the dim red glow of the coals. An elder sits with them, his voice barely more than a whisper, roughened by years and softened by the hour. From your spot beneath the warmth of your furs, you catch fragments of the tale. He speaks of the great waters, a place far beyond the valleys and mountains you know, a place where the land ends and the world becomes nothing but endless, restless waves. His words drift like smoke, painting pictures of vast, open horizons where the sun sinks directly into the water and strange creatures swim beneath the surface, some too large and ancient to imagine. Historians still argue whether these early stories were inspired by real ocean journeys or simply the result of a good storyteller and an eager audience. But the way the elder speaks, his eyes distant and dreamy, makes you believe, if only for a moment, that such places do exist, and perhaps someone among you might one day stand at the edge of those great waters. The older children lean closer, completely enchanted. They're old enough now to recognize the subtle lessons buried beneath the wonder, the reminders about bravery, about patience, and about the wisdom of listening to both the earth and their own hearts. The conversation fades into thoughtful silence, broken only by the occasional crackle of a stubborn ember. You shift gently under your blanket, eyes half closed, but mind still wandering. Outside, the stars continue their slow march across the sky, the great horned beast now dipping low toward the horizon. A faint breeze pushes through the cave entrance, stirring the garlands overhead. The chimes chime softly, their music a lullaby older than memory. You wonder, half dreaming now, if the ancestors watch these quiet gatherings from some hidden place beyond the stars, if they sit around their own great fires, telling stories of you just as you tell stories of them. And as the last fragments of the elder's tale drift away on the cool night air, your thoughts settle like the final coals in the hearth, glowing quietly as sleep carries you gently into its waiting arms. The fire is a bed of soft red coals now, faintly pulsing like the quiet heartbeat of the night itself. The sharp crackle of burning logs has long faded, replaced by the gentle sound of breathing, slow, steady, and content. Even the restless ones have finally given in to the pull of sleep. But outside, just beyond the entrance, the night continues its silent work. A soft breeze curls through the hanging garlands, sending a faint rustle through the feathers and bones strung carefully above. The charms sway gently, their wooden and stone bodies clicking together like a chorus of quiet memories. And yet, even in this peaceful stillness, the cave seems to hold its breath for one final ritual. You stir slightly under your furs, not quite awake, but not fully lost to dreams. It's time for the last guardians of the night to take their watch. A few among the community, always the lightest sleepers, the ones who say they can hear the shift of a stone in their dreams, rise quietly. These are the night watchers, their task as old as fire itself. You crack open an eye, just enough to see them moving with practiced ease. They tend to the embers, gently nudging the coals and adding a few thin pieces of dried wood, enough to keep the heart of the fire alive without rousing the full flames. One of them pauses by the cave entrance, gazing out into the night. From where you lie, you can just see the silhouette of their figure against the faint starlight. Their head tilts slightly, listening for any sound that doesn't belong. The soft snap of a twig, the distant yip of a curious fox, or the low, questioning rumble of thunder far beyond the hills. Historians still debate whether these night watchers were born from necessity or a deeper, symbolic duty. Were they protectors, or simply restless souls who felt more at peace under the stars than beneath the weight of a heavy blanket? You think of Mara, who often volunteers for this quiet vigil. She once said, "The night speaks more clearly than any storyteller, if you're only willing to listen." For a moment, you wonder if she's out there now, tracing patterns in the stars or quietly humming an old lullaby to herself as she watches over those still lost in sleep. The faintest sound reaches your ears, a gentle thrum of wind curling through the valley, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and distant rain. It's a familiar smell, one that promises the season's slow turning. And then another sound, a soft, high whistle. The night watchers use it to communicate, a language of careful notes that blend seamlessly with the wind. One note means all is well. Two notes suggest a wary pause, a reminder to keep ears open. Tonight, just one note drifts through the air, rising and falling before being swallowed by the quiet. All is well. Relieved, you shift back under your furs, letting the weight of sleep pull you closer once again. The night watchers will keep their silent vigil. The charms will continue to sway above. And the fire, even at its quietest, will hold fast until dawn returns with its promise of light. Even as sleep tugs at your thoughts, the rhythm of the night unfolds with perfect, unhurried grace. Somewhere across the cave, a child stirs briefly, murmuring half a dream before settling again into the warmth of tangled furs. Outside, the watchers have begun their slow circuit around the perimeter of the clearing. Their footsteps are almost soundless over the packed earth, each step a careful conversation with the ground beneath them. You remember your first time taking the night watch, barely old enough to hold your head high in front of the elders, but stubborn enough to insist you were ready. The memory makes you smile even now. You'd spent most of that night wide-eyed and shivering, convinced every shadow held the gleam of unseen eyes, and every rustle of the trees meant something lurking just beyond sight. But over time, you learned the truth the watchers know well. Most of the night's sounds are simply the world breathing, the creak of a bending tree branch, the faint shuffle of a rabbit moving through dry grass, the soft splash of water against smooth stones in the river below. Tonight, the night watchers carry torches made from tightly wrapped reeds dipped in pine resin. They move in a practiced rhythm, the flames casting long shadows that dance briefly against the stones before vanishing again into the dark. From your cozy spot near the fire, you can see the glow of those torches tracing a protective circle beyond the cave's entrance. It's comforting, like a heartbeat moving just beyond the edge of sleep. One of the watchers pauses by a tall, standing stone near the clearing's edge, a marker placed generations ago, its surface etched with simple, spiral patterns and a line of ancient handprints. Some say it was placed to mark territory, others believe it's a silent greeting to wandering spirits. Historians still debate whether such stones held deep spiritual significance or were simply practical landmarks. You close your eyes, imagining the watcher's slow circuit as a kind of ritual dance, one that's been repeated more nights than anyone could possibly count. And then, like a song reaching its final quiet note, the watchers return. The torches are carefully extinguished at the cave's entrance, the flames snuffed out with practiced ease, leaving only the soft glow of the coals and the faint silver light of stars pouring through the cave opening. One by one, the watchers settle back into their own places near the embers. Their faces are calm, their duty fulfilled. The night is safe. You draw the furs closer around your shoulders and feel your body finally give in to the quiet. The charms sway gently overhead, their faint chimes like the last whispers of the day. And outside, the stars turn slowly on their ancient path, watching over all. Tomorrow, the fire will be rebuilt, the stories retold, and the children will dance again in the bright morning light. But for now, all is still, all is well. Sometime in the quiet between night's deepest hour and the first pale hint of dawn, the cave feels suspended in a perfect balance between sleep and waking, between the warmth of yesterday's fire and the cool promise of morning. You stir slightly, not quite ready to rise, but aware enough to notice the subtle changes. The embers have dimmed to the faintest blush beneath their protective layer of ash. Above, the garlands sway less now, their shadows barely moving on the stone walls. Even the charms hang still, as if they too are resting after the night's gentle watch. Outside the cave, the world begins its slow stirring. There's no rooster crowing here, no clanging bells, just the soft hush of the earth exhaling. The first birds haven't found their voices yet, but you can almost feel the moment approaching when they will. Through half-lidded eyes, you see one of the oldest elders already sitting up near the entrance, her silhouette outlined faintly against the pale starlight. Without a sound, she lifts a small bundle wrapped in soft, worn leather and begins unwrapping it slowly. It's the dawn charm, an object so old that even the elders speak of it with a kind of hushed reverence. Carved from a single piece of dark wood, smooth from countless hands, it's said to hold the memory of every sunrise witnessed from this cave. She rises carefully, joints creaking like old trees in a soft breeze, and carries the charm toward the cave entrance. There, she hangs it from a low branch of the ancient tree that stands guard just outside. Historians still debate whether such dawn rituals held the weight of religious ceremony or were simply acts of gratitude. Thank you to the night for its peace, and a hopeful greeting to the day ahead. From where you lie, barely awake, you watch the charm spin slowly in the faintest breath of morning air. Its movement is hypnotic, a silent promise that the cycle continues. That night always gives way to light, and every end quietly holds the seed of a new beginning. The elder turns back toward the cave and pauses. Her gaze sweeps over the sleeping forms, tucked safely under their blankets of furs, over the soft outlines of faces, young and old, before settling briefly on you. She gives the smallest nod, a gesture that needs no words. You close your eyes again, the image of the dawn charm swaying gently in your thoughts, its carved spirals slowly turning as the horizon begins to brighten. Outside, the faintest bird song sounds, a tentative note, barely more than a whisper, but it's enough. The day is coming, and as your breathing slows, you know that when you wake, the fire will be built anew, and this stone home will fill once more with warmth, with laughter, and with the quiet joy of life's simplest rituals. For now, though, you stay right where you are, wrapped in the safety of ancient walls, beneath the soft music of charms and the peaceful hush of a world still half asleep. Light finally begins to filter through the narrow entrance of the cave, soft and golden, like a gentle hand brushing across your closed eyelids. You stir beneath your furs, feeling the warmth of the new day gently pushing against the last remnants of sleep. Around you, the slow symphony of morning begins, a low murmur of voices as the earliest risers move quietly, careful not to disturb those still dreaming. The faint clatter of stone bowls and the soft rustle of furs being folded and tucked away. Somewhere near the entrance, a child's sleepy giggle breaks the hush, quickly followed by a parental shushing that makes you smile even before your eyes fully open. You sit up slowly, stretching your arms toward the painted ceiling overhead. In the morning light, the vibrant ochre swirls you traced yesterday have softened into something almost magical, blending perfectly with the older marks that came before. Your handprint remains clear among them, a small but certain sign that you were here, that this moment was real. The fire has been rebuilt, its small, steady flames licking at freshly laid kindling. The new day smells of damp earth warmed by sun, mingled with the faint fragrance of last night's celebrations still clinging to the air, sweet honey, crushed herbs, and the smoky memory of the great feast. You rise and step barefoot across the cool stone, drawn toward the cave's entrance. The dawn charm still hangs from the old tree outside, swaying gently in the morning breeze. It catches the light with each slow turn, the carved spiral seeming to glow faintly against the brightening sky. You pause there, taking in the view beyond the cave. The valley stretches out before you, bathed in the soft gold of early light. Thin tendrils of mist cling to the low places, slowly unraveling as the sun climbs higher. Far off, the river glimmers, winding its endless path toward lands you've only heard about in the most distant of stories. And standing there, you feel it, that quiet, peaceful certainty that all of this will happen again. The fires will burn, the stories will be told, and the walls will gather new marks, layer upon layer, like the soft breath of time itself, painted gently across stone. A small hand slips into yours, warm and curious. You glance down to see one of the younger children standing beside you, eyes squinting against the light, still wrapped in the sleepiness of morning. "Will we dance again tonight?" they ask, in a voice barely louder than the breeze. You give their hand a gentle squeeze and nod. "Of course," you whisper, your voice carried softly away by the morning air. Because that's the beauty of it all. Each day a quiet celebration of simply being. Each night a promise that even in darkness there is warmth, there is light, and there is always another story waiting to be told. And so, as the sun rises gently above the horizon and the first songs of morning weave their way through the air, you find yourself sinking back into the quiet comfort of the present. The stories of the night linger, like the last soft glow of embers, warm and familiar against the cool promise of the day ahead. You breathe deeply, the air filled with the mingled scents of earth and stone, of fires burned low and dreams still hanging gently in the morning mist. Around you, the cave remains a sanctuary, timeless and still, its painted walls and swaying garlands gently cradling the memories of countless nights just like this one. Nights of shared laughter and quiet reflection, of footsteps worn smooth into stone paths and stories etched into hearts long after their words have faded. Outside, the valley stretches wide and endless, its hills and rivers bathed in golden light, and within that light, you feel the steady hum of life continuing, softly, gently, endlessly. For now, there is no need to rise, no need to worry about what comes next. The day will unfold when it is ready, and you, safe and warm in the gentle hush of this ancient world, are exactly where you need to be. So close your eyes if you haven't already. Let your breath slow. Let the last traces of firelight fade into dreams. The stories will be here waiting, and the dawn will greet you when you're ready. Today's story ends here. Good night and sweet dreams. See you again.